Hi everyone, my name is Alli Vitello and I'm an ecologist, but I'm also a Beaver Corps member. And so I'm really excited to be moderating this session with a group of ranchers and producers because that is a population that I spend a lot of time with. And everyone is going to have about 15 minutes to speak. They have their own presentations. And then we're going to jump to a session where we're going to have Q&A. So please submit questions that you have for every presenter in the app. And I'm going to be moderating that and asking questions after the fact. All right. So first, I'd like to invite up Dallas May, who is a rancher with May Ranch.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a real honor for me to be here, to be able to speak to a group of like-minded people about everything that surrounds us, who care enough to get involved and to try to enact protection for our natural environment and to be able to organize some good work. I'd like to share a little bit about what I've tried to do in my very small part of the world. I unknowingly began to work for a nonprofit while I was still in high school. I've worked for that same nonprofit for 50 years now, and I can confidently say that I've never endangered its nonprofit status. That's the May Ranch. My family's heritage is not one of land ownership, but more sharecropping and leasing and renting of land, and trying to find a way to provide for our families in an agricultural setting. It wasn't always easy because a lot of the land around us is already developed into farmland. And there's one reason that this has happened is because people have to find a way to provide for a safe, affordable, sustainable supply of food. And that was especially the case during World War II, World War I, whenever there needed to be more of that done, and there was a lot of native grasslands plowed up. So as that happened, most of the area that I live in, the native grasslands disappeared. And because of that, they were never able to be restored again. But we were really fortunate in the place that we are on now. It was protected. And there was one reason that it was protected, and it was one species of animal that protected that, and it was this: cattle. Cattle and cattle ranchers are sometimes not understood or misunderstood, but if it wasn't for cattle on these native grasslands, these places would long ago have been changed, developed, and wouldn't be there. So the cattle have taken the place of the native bison, elk. We still have a lot of deer. But if it wasn't for cattle on these landscapes, these places would not exist. So as we work with our cattle and we coexist with wildlife, coexist with the habitat that they create, the cattle are an actual benefit. We, over many years, created what we thought was a real benefit to our ranch, and that was developing exclosures in several places on the ranch, a lot of them along the creek, or places where we had good habitat, trees and beaver complexes, flowing water. So we would build these exclosures and keep our cattle totally out of those places. I thought we were doing a really good thing. We're creating wildlife sanctuaries. But what I found out in doing these exclosures, we had a lot of places. This is one, you'll have to understand, in our area, our average precipitation is 12 inches. We are very dry. We have points in our season where our creek actually becomes ephemeral. And if it wasn't for our beaver ponds and some bison wallows, buffalo wallows, we wouldn't have any water in a lot of places of the ranch. If you'll notice in this is a beaver lodge made out of only bulrushes, cattails, and mud. That's what our beavers use for their dams and their lodges. So they create these oases in the middle of a dry prairie. You can see, for example, if you look closely, there are fish in this water, and this will keep water year-round. It creates a magnet for many species, and that's inside one of our exclosures. So we have other places such as this where we have migrating waterfowl. This is a beaver dam with a pretty good supply, but we'll have all kinds of migrating waterfowl come through. For example, the pelicans here, but many others. Another place here, we have the protection in place that we have a lot of nesting cover for waterfowl. One more, this is actually a buffalo wallow in the middle of the creek, but it holds water year-round even when our stream becomes ephemeral. And you can see how badly this is needed on the eastern arid dry plains. So they're always taken up. But what happened for us in April of 2022, we had a wildfire on the ranch. And it was on the worst possible day it could have happened. It was a 70+ mile an hour wind sustained for overnight, one day and the next night. And at the south end of our ranch, which the wind was blowing from south to north, we had a fire start from a power line. And when that fire started, we were incapable of putting it out. It was moving so fast and blowing so far in front of us, we couldn't get it put out. So what happened, the result of that, we lost 9,000 acres of our ranch in about a 2-hour period. We had a lot of loss of life, and it was devastated. We lost all of the forage upon the ranch through the creek bottom for miles and miles, burnt everything, lost cattle, lost all the habitat. It actually burnt most of the beaver lodges and beaver dams because there was a lot of dry material in them. So we had that major loss. But what happened was, after about 3 months of extreme dry weather, we started to get a few rains. I actually thought the beaver were gone. I thought the ones that weren't killed in the fire probably had left. They had no habitat. The creek became so dry for those 3 months that there, even in the ponds and buffalo wallows, there was very little water. So I was very distraught. I thought that the beaver were gone. We may never get them back again. But once that did, the recovery of the ranch was extremely fast. It was accelerated by the fact that we have a lot of biodiversity in our seed bank. Because we basically operate in a natural way, we have a huge bank of seeds. A few years ago, we had a study done by Denver Botanical Gardens asked to come out. They had a lot of research done on public lands on the Eastern Plains, mostly public right-of-ways, but they didn't have any good material from private lands. So they came to the ranch and they spent 2 years, a team of botanists, they went across the ranch every 3 months and surveyed plants. What they found was there were 335 species of native plants on the ranch. Of those, 70 of them were different grasses and grass species, which I couldn't believe. You know, to me, I see 5 species of grass. But what happened after we had our fire was that recovery was quick. It was quick because we had all these different species of grass seed, and a lot of them were designed to be able to recover in these situations. For example, there's one species, needle and thread grass, that very seldom do we see or don't notice. It's not a big grazing grass, but once we had these bare areas from the fire and did finally start getting some rain, we had a major recovery, and a lot of it were single species of grass that were able to fill in, and then the other native species took over. But what happened in our exclosures, where there had been no cattle, even though I thought it looked really good, in those exclosures, they had become overran with dominant species. There was no biodiversity, and those places did not recover from the fire, still have not recovered today. So going on 2.5 years later, the portions of the ranch that were grazed have a huge amount of recovery. The portions that were not grazed by ungulates are struggling to survive. So that was a failed experiment on our part. We thought we were doing the right thing, but we soon found out, as we do in every operation we do, that the natural way is the best way, rather than us trying to change it. So the reason I bring that up is after our fire and that recovery, if it wasn't for grazing on those areas, responsible grazing, I understand there are a lot of places that grazing can be done improperly, but responsible grazing allowed that ranch to recover quickly. One thing I was very worried about, the beaver being gone because we had no water. Once the stream did start flowing again, we started getting water, all of a sudden there were signs of beaver again. And what I quickly found out, those beaver had never left the ranch. They were actually living in dirt burrows in the dry stream banks. They had dug into the stream banks, and they had survived there waiting for that water to come back. That's the true sign of resilience. That's something that we can't recreate, but it happened. So the picture you're seeing here, a year after our fire, there was a major series of storms around Colorado Springs, Colorado. That's the head of Big Sandy Creek, which goes through our ranch. So these major storms in a 2-week period dumped over 10 inches of rain. It created a flash flood situation on Big Sandy Creek around the Black Forest. That flash flood, we heard that it had started. We didn't think it would ever get to us. It's 150 miles away. But in 2 days, those floodwaters did reach our northern boundary, and they entered our ranch as debris filled, sediment filled, trash floating in the water, several thousand cubic feet per second of water. They entered into our ranch, and north of our ranch is basically incised stream channels. It was a narrow stream carrying a big amount of water real rapidly. So once that flood reached our north boundary, it entered into our marshes, our wetlands, our beaver complexes, and that distributed that water over a 1 to 2 mile wide area on our floodplain. Instead of a narrow, quick moving stream channel, it distributed that, moved it across, put water into the alluvial aquifer, the gravel beds. By then, our beavers, in some of these pictures, you can kind of tell where some of the beaver lodges and dams have been rebuilt. But this water is actually a mile wide in places, some even wider. So because of these wetlands and because of the mitigation that the beavers provided, rather than that water rushing into the Arkansas River is at our south boundary. That would have entered the river in a flood state, in a flash, in about a 24-hour period it would have entered. But because of these beaver complexes and the work that they do, this is what was done. And this was only a few months after they began to rebuild their dams and lodges. So one of the most interesting things, once this did, you'll see at the bottom of this picture, a big set of bulrushes that the floodwater actually laid that over flat. And also in the bottom of this, there are beaver dams and lodges in the bottom of this. As it gets to the end of the video, you'll be able to see some of them. But the most remarkable thing with all of this, what took 2 days to go 150 miles to reach our ranch, once it got to our ranch, in order to go another 7 miles to go to the river, that's all it had to go, 7 miles to get to the Arkansas River. It took 2.5 days. That flood that was traveling at 75 miles a day took 2.5 days to go 7 miles. I might add that in these wetlands, we are host to several teeny species. All of this is because the beaver have created these wetlands and kept the alluvial aquifer full. But one thing that it does is, people have always asked us, do we fence off our creek? Do we keep our cattle out of the riparian areas? The answer to that is no. We have not fenced the cattle away from our creek areas in the entire time that I've been on that ranch. And I think what it has done is creates a natural environment. We don't create unnatural traffic patterns. Actually, what happens is our cattle, because we allow them free range of the whole ranch, they avoid these areas in the growing seasons. There's a huge amount of invertebrates, of insects. The cattle do not want to be in these wetlands in the summer and the growing season, so they do not come into these areas. They avoid that. And then, like now, the cattle really haven't entered back into the wetlands yet, but they will. Those will be our calving grounds. And I think it's all part of working with nature that we're able to do that and be able to mimic what is maybe happened before pre-European settlement. So all of that being said, one thing that I would like to say, that if this would not have been in place, if these natural complexes would not have protected us from that flash flood, that would have entered the river, created a bunch of problems down there, and the beaver are solely responsible for the benefits that this has provided. And I hope that through some efforts like this, beaver get a chance to do more of this type of work in watersheds, and headlands that have been degraded to the point where they're filling our reservoirs with sediment. So I'll end with that. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to such a great group of people, and I look forward to answering questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Dallas. And I mean, what amazing footage. It's so good to have a picture painted so clearly. And next up, we're really excited to invite Deirdre Macnab, who is a cattle rancher with 4M Ranch.
Okay, I think I've got a presentation come up. I need a tutorial on.
Go ahead and see here. Here we go. All right. Do you know how to run it from here?
Yeah, but can you get the full screen? I think that's it. Okay, wait, don't leave yet. Come back. Okay, thank you.
I can stay here if you want.
I'd love you to. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Deirdre Macnab from Meeker, Colorado. And anybody here from Northwest Colorado? There we go. At least 2, 3. Anyway, welcome to everybody. It's so thrilling to see this level of interest in this topic and to see people coming from all over the world to learn more and share what we know. I'm here today to recruit you. We have been seeing these beautiful vistas of alpine country with the beavers. I'm here to recruit you to be interested and take action on expanding desert-based beaver riparian, the movement that I hope is just growing and blowing forward. The problem that we're facing in particularly the West, and I'm sure, and I know many other areas of the world, is the desertification of our soil. How many of you have seen the TED Talk by Alan Savory? That's good. That's like a third. The rest of you, that is your homework tonight. Alan Savory TED Talk, write it down and watch it. This is very important because just like Dallas shared with you, livestock are not the problem. Livestock are a big part of the answer when they are grazed properly and they're managed. So to me, having had the opportunity just for a few years of beginning to experiment with this, beavers and livestock working in tandem are a very, very powerful tool for us to begin to work with nature and restore ecosystems that have been degraded so substantially, particularly in the West over the last couple hundred years. We are an Audubon Ranch, which is a program the Rocky Mountain Audubon started a few years ago, where ranchers agree not to use fertilizer, not to use pesticides or herbicides, and to utilize grazing techniques that move cattle the way the buffalo would have moved, using electric fences to keep them in large mobs, move quickly, and give the ground rest. This has the benefit of vastly and rapidly improving the soil composition. So I first started to learn about beavers, and Jen, if you would raise your hand, Jen Wellman sitting over there from the Nature Conservancy in Routt County, she had heard that the White River Alliance might be interested in some work on the beaver. We're like a Friends of the River group, the White River Alliance, a group of stakeholders in Rio Blanco County who care about a healthy river. And we had learned that beavers had the opportunity to really restore the ecosystem of the river. So working with the Nature Conservancy, as well as American Rivers and Audubon and Trout Unlimited and our local BLM office, which was very, very supportive, we moved forward with a workshop. And this was our poster. We put it all across the western slope, and we ended up with roughly 40 people coming to remote Rio Blanco County. I think all of you know this, but I like these pictures. So it shows the elimination of the beavers after Eurasia had all their beaver mined out. They came to the American West and America overall and removed the beavers. And one of the reasons was that was like the iPhone today, the beaver hat. Everybody had to have one. And so we saw a very rapid elimination of the beaver, and that was followed by, in our country, tens of thousands of cattle and sheep that were brought west to graze and were just left there. And people didn't think or understand the biology of the soil, that you had to give the soil time to rest, regrow, as the buffalo would, as they would move, well, a lot like how Dallas manages his ranch, like the buffalo would move, depending on the season, the bugs, and how the forage was. We have two additional stresses in our area to our riparian. One is, on the bottom, tamarisk. It is an exotic invasive that was introduced, I think, from Australia. Very thirsty, dries out the soil, makes it salty, so other forage does not grow. And in our area, we are way over our herd management goal on wild horses. So across from the road from our ranch, we have roughly 2,000 wild horses. There should be 175. And unlike cattle and sheep, they are not managed. They're able to just stay there. Where do they hang out? The riparian. So these are two additional challenges that we are working on. Our group has released tens of thousands of tamarisk beetles. They look like little apple seeds. And this is CSU that has an insectary, and we get them from there. They have a fabulous program using nature-based solutions, bugs and funguses, to get rid of weeds. It's been very effective. So what happens without the soil cover? We see, and as you all know, the vast erosion. And as you drive through desert country, you see these highly eroded stream beds. And what that does, as you know, it lowers the water table. The area that our ranch is in the area called the Peons. That in Ute means tall grass. And that has almost disappeared because of all of these challenges. So our goal is to use our cattle in a way that is improving the soil by managing them properly, trying to encourage the BLM and support the BLM in their efforts to reduce the wild horse herd to a manageable, sustainable size, and use the beetles to eliminate the tamarisk so that we can once again see our riparian areas flourish. So here's a good example. When the water table gets lower in the desert, we lose our tall grass, and it gets substituted with greasewood and sage in our area. So working as a team with the Nature Conservancy, American Rivers, and other nonprofits in our BLM office, we got quite a good group to put in a number of beaver dam analogs. And where we sited them was just upstream of where beavers had moved on their own. And this is in desert country, not the many alpine pictures we've seen. We invited several speakers who had different levels of expertise to come and share with us their knowledge. And you can see in this picture how we now have large ponds with lots of ducks and water life that is coming back, dropping the sediment, and probably not in my lifetime, but maybe in yours, we'll begin to see rapid improvement and see the water table begin to rise again, which is super exciting. The other thing we've gotten involved in, I know this is a beaver conference, but One Rock dams in the desert, we have a lot of ephemeral streams and creeks. So the utilization of One Rock dams where we have intermittent flows and using the beaver dam analogs where there are a lot less, but a few perennial streams and creeks has shown some really exciting promise. The gentleman in the blue is standing, you can hardly see it, next to a One Rock dam that we'd put in 1 month or 2 months before. It's incredible how quickly the land responds to holding the moisture. And so we are looking forward to a continuation of adding more and more beaver dam analogs and One Rock dams. The Bureau of Land Management in our part of the state has just a vast, huge area of dry country with some sporadic springs and creeks and a few unique year-round flows. And so we think that this has enormous potential to really help reduce sediment before it gets into the river, help clean up the water, create important wildlife corridors, and be really a significant leap forward for the integrity of our White River water basin. So let me just remind, who remembers their homework tonight? Anybody? Alan Savory? Yeah, TED Talk, good. So what we are continuing to do is our priority is look for where the beavers are now and add on to that with the BDAs. And then secondly, because there are only a few places that is happening, look for areas where we could put beaver dam analogs and create habitat for the beavers to move into. So I did want to just end with 3 takeaways. Really important. Ranchers are not the enemy. They need to be the ally in this movement. They need to be given an opportunity. I know we have irrigated pasture as well. We have a lot of problems with beavers there. That used to be where the beavers lived. They created the floodplains, but now we do it with flood irrigation. We need them back up in the high desert. So ranchers need to be given an opportunity to have someone come and remove them so they can be taken to a place where they can be useful and they can be a positive. Because I heard a little earlier, there was some conversation about new laws that would prohibit potentially removing beavers. That will create a civil war, which I think is really unnecessary with the ranching community. So what Dallas showed you, the benefits to ranchers, is it provides more livestock grazing, flood control, fire protection, but it also helps create a much healthier ecosystem for everybody. And I think Dallas had another great point, which is ranches are very important because they keep land wild and open for wildlife and slow the process of development. So I would just urge our group here to look to ranchers as a new ally in this movement, one that we need to work with and find collaborative solutions, because I believe that the desires and the goals are very much shared. My second item is, we have on our White River Alliance, our logo is Give a Damn, is to get in the water and help start creating these dams, and hands-on movement is, I think, very rewarding for all of us. We're here because we love nature and we love the outdoors, so let's get out there and build those One Rock dams and beaver dam analogs. My third takeaway, we are on the cusp of a very important election. Make sure every single one of you vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Here, I'll just hand it to you. I think that's easy.
All right. Thank you so much, Deirdre. It's always good to have a reminder that not every ecosystem that this work could be done on is in beautiful alpine meadows. Some of it is a little rougher, and that's okay. And next, I'd like to welcome up Joaquin Murrieta, who is a cultural ecologist director with the Watershed Management Group.
Bueno, sí. Have you seen a human beaver? We talk a lot about actual beavers, but my story goes to what are the humans beavering about? We're working a lot with maintaining, enhancing, elevating riparian systems in South Arizona and Northwest Mexico. Beavers used to be there, but they were extinct in the late 18th century. Then they were reintroduced in 1999. Then they migrated into Mexico. And then they reached a peak, and now they're down again. So we're understanding all that stuff. So humans, actually, we are imitating what beavers been doing in the landscape. So beavers can be back and stay in the landscape. As we hear before, they are extremely important for the riparian system, as well as the overall productivity of the watershed. So I'll talk about that. What are the humans doing imitating beavers in order to diminish the speed of water, spread that water, and infiltrate that water? So that's the story, and this is the work of beavers, and also as the work of ranchers. So we want to combine that. What is that symbiosis between a beaver and a rancher? And how that work, and how can that benefit each of us? So I'm going to make you practice your Spanish. So when we come to river restoration in Mexico, we say, mejor castor que tractor. Can you say that? Can you repeat with me? Mejor castor que tractor. So that's how we're doing. It's better a beaver than a tractor for river restoration. So that's kind of the story that I want to share, and the work we're doing with ranchers, and the teachings that the beavers are giving us in this process of understanding their behavior in these desert rivers that we're working with. This is a fantastic network that in the organization where I work, Watershed Management Group, we created the River Run Network. So most of these humans are urban-based. And this urban base is helping us to restore an urban river. So the vision that we have for the Santa Cruz River in Tucson is to have a river flowing 30, 40 years from now. So we started looking at beavers in the adjacent watershed, which is the San Pedro River. So 20, 30 years from now, those beavers, we can bring them back to the Santa Cruz River. That's kind of our vision. So these people are helping us to restore the Santa Cruz River. And we are learning from the beavers in the San Pedro. So in 20, 30 years from now, we'll have beavers in Tucson. So that's a fantastic vision to have. And I want to be there. So I also want to hurry up in doing that. Watershed Management Group, we have the expertise of looking at watershed health from an urban perspective. What is the role of the built environment or disturbed environment in watershed health and in riparian health? Because we humans, we love the city. We love the built environment. We love, well, we don't love it that much, the disturbed environment. And what is that role of the built environment in watershed health? Because the vision that we have is this. This is the Santa Cruz River 40 years from now. It doesn't look like that at all right now. But by having this and doing all this, beavers will come back into this environment. That's kind of what we're trying to do. Yes, we are part of the greater Colorado River watershed. I'm going to be talking about this San Pedro watershed that is here. That is a shared watershed between ranchers of Mexico, ranchers of the US, different cultures like the Odom people, as well as the Opata people, as well as the, I'll stop there. And these are some of the areas that we're working with the community and with Watershed in some of the areas. I mentioned beavers, I'm looking for the, right here, these are the pictures that you're going to see. So how are we dealing with ranchers in this part of the world to elevate the riparian health as well as the presence and enhancement of beavers? And how the beavers can help us for river restoration. So yeah, we're putting nature to work. There is a great book out there, Let Nature Do the Work. Take a look at that book as well. So these are where the beavers were reintroduced in 1999. Then they expanded into Mexico, and by 2006, they just showed up. We didn't do anything in Mexico. They just appeared in the ranching, with the ranching community. And it's funny because now, this is where we're seeing more beavers than in over here. So we're learning that. And this is the third year that we're monitoring beavers binationally. And it's creating a fantastic movement of understanding beavers on the landscape. And we're also part of the effort to reintroduce beavers here in the Cienega Creek, which is also a public area in Arizona. These are some of the monitoring that we've been doing in the last 2-3 years. Those are the numbers that we have. And a fourth monitoring is happening in Arizona. The third is happening in Sonora. And now in November. So if you are in Tucson, come and help us count beavers on any of the sides of the border. Here is a border that divides two countries. And it's actually a wall. There is a wall over there that it doesn't let the jaguar cross, or the bear, or the javelina, or those big animals that are out there. Not even a beaver, because it's also the border sometimes cross those rivers. So that's another impediment that we're dealing with. And again, the beavers are connecting rural, urban populations of humans understanding the health of the watershed. For me, that's the important role of the beaver. And how is our collaboration with the rural community and the urban community for rivershed, or for rivers health and watershed health? That's, again, our policy of mejor castor que tractor. And be careful, because sometimes your mouth and your brain kind of tricks you. So you want to say mejor tractor que castor. No. It's mejor castor que tractor. So yes, part of this strategy is working with government. Part of the policies that we're establishing, like reintroduction of beavers in the Cienega. Also understanding beavers on both sides of the border. And rehydration of our riparian systems, which is mainly on the San Pedro and the Santa Cruz watersheds. Yes, we talk about all this. I already mentioned this. They are so cute. That's the other thing. I mean, I think all of us took a picture of the tiny little beaver that it was there in one of the first slides this morning. That's the other thing. I mean, it's this cute animal that is helping us restore the health of the watershed. That is a fantastic thing. And in that process, it creates this habitat for all kinds of species, and also it enhances the productivity of the watershed that some of us love. I mean, we want more water, we want more grasses, we want more health in the riparian systems. And these guys are helping us to do all that. We're working in what I call the origins of water, which is the Sky Island region between Arizona and Sonora. This is one picture close to Elgin in Arizona, which is the Huachuca Mountains there in the background. You're not seeing them, because there is a huge rain coming down right there. All that water feeds these two river systems, the Santa Cruz and the San Pedro. And also it's snow in this region. This is on the other side. This is in Mexico, Mariquita Mountain. And you see some snow over there. And where does water goes from the hill? What is the top of the watershed? It's the mountains. Water always goes downhill. So beavers are looking into that. We are looking into that. Water doesn't recognize borders. So how are we working in that flow of water? And what is the role of beavers in that? All this is ranch country on both sides of the border. The importance of the ranching community is that most of the biodiversity is in the ranch community. So we need to understand that as well. So in the urban components, we are diminishing the speed of water, creating rain gardens. This is a rain garden in a school that is helping us to diminish the speed, spread that water, and infiltrate that water where it's falling. Urban environments has a lot of impact on the health of the watershed. And that way we're understanding our role as humans in that health, as well with the ranchers where they live in their communities, as well as in bigger urban environments. This is a rancher creating rain gardens on a church that he goes every Sunday. So that's a fantastic component. Oh, that's their understanding of water. And as well, we're working with ranchers to understand how water moves in their landscape and how wildlife move in their landscape as well. This is the habitat of beavers and ranchers that we're working with. And this is the people that is helping us to monitor and understand the behavior of beavers. There are some numbers that we're finding on both sides of the border. We're understanding those dynamics. We have gatherings with the ranching community just to understand that. And also this, I mean, how do we collaborate with cows in these ecosystems? Bison was mentioned before. Cows are here, and they've been here for 500 years. So how do we work with that? The rancher, most of the time, they want better grasslands and better water. We also want that. And the beaver also wants that. So how do we balance all that? How do you call this? Eye candy, somebody mentioned? Here we are monitoring the beaver behavior in the San Pedro River on the Mexico side. It's a bunch of young people that is helping us to monitor. We're using Survey 123 just to understand that. We click our iPhone, and then suddenly we have a survey that is happening. And several of us go, we walk 5-8 miles. My colleague is going to talk about those techniques on Wednesday if you want to know more about how we are using that. Again, one of the lodges of beavers in one of the reservoirs of a rancher in Mexico. We get excited when we see all those things. And so we're balancing the presence of cows with the presence of ranchers, with the presence of beavers in our riparian system. There is room for both of them, and we're understanding that the behavior of all of us. I cannot see with my beaver mask. It's 2 minutes, all right. So this is the human beavering we're doing with the ranching communities. I was mentioned before. A lot of rock structures to diminish the speed, spread and infiltrate that water, and also maintaining our soil on the ground. These are big structures that we usually don't like to use. We don't like to use the cage metal gabions. Usually it's a one rock dam. But the impact of this is maintaining the sediment, is maintaining the soil, expanding the grassland area, and maintaining the humidity in those areas, and infiltrating the water in a slow motion. This is a bunch of ranchers that we're understanding the rotation of cattle. That video that you're going to see tonight is a lot to do with rotation and fallow of the land. So we're understanding that. What is the role of grasslands in infiltrating water to maintain the riparian systems? So from this, these are presence of cow. we do have a lot of erosion, but there are ways of diminishing that. From that, these are gabions that we have built with the ranching community. That's how they look on the ground. And in one rainy season, I was going to see in 2 rain events, this is what happens. So what holds more water? That or this? And it's very simple structures. Yes, they do take labor. And somebody needs to do this work. It's not just me doing all this work. It's all these ranchers and all those young people as well. Again, another result of these gabions. The rotation of cows, that's what we want to see, all right? So cows come there, they feed that, then they come back after a year, and that's what they come back afterwards. That's the sediment I wanted to show. All this soil is staying where it should be, as opposed to just going to the San Pedro River, as opposed to that river that this great rancher mentioned before. So that's the beauty of these rock structures. And I think one of the biggest threats is not the ranching community. It's never been. It's actually the mining community. Because they're extracting all this water from the San Pedro, the Santa Cruz, and other watersheds. So we're working with the ranching community to, again, maintain those dialogues open with the mining community. So there is water for all of us in these working landscapes. So that's what I wanted to share. Some more eye candy for you. And yes, beavers are fantastic. And this is the people that we are understanding beavers and working with them. And I just want to thank you. I'll be around till Wednesday here if there's any observation, any question. Those are my contacts, and thank you so much. I do have a human face.
Thank you, Joaquin. I don't know if I've ever felt a wave of jealousy move through 500 people as happened when you came up here with your beaver mask on. So thank you for sharing that with all of us. And last but not least for this session, I'm excited to welcome Zach Ducheneaux to the stand. And Zach is a Farm Services Administrator with the Farm Services Agency.
Thank you. How about now? There we go. Good. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to the Beaver Institute, Adam, Laura, the team for having us out here. I will stipulate at the beginning of this conversation that I probably have the least business being here out of anybody in the room. I have seen exactly one beaver in my entire life, and it was in our stock pond out there by our family ranch on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. But I've got a good friend in the horsemanship industry named Kurt Pate. And one of the things that he taught me and shared with me is that it's what you learn after you think you know it all that really matters. And I really embrace that because, as my brothers would be glad to tell you, I'm pretty ignorant of a lot of things. But I think I know a lot about another thing. And I had a chance to listen to the book Eager. And that really opened my eyes to a lot of the things that I didn't know about, that I thought I knew. Beavers kill trees, the list of things that the young lady had up here that are beaver myths. I believe those. I thought I knew those things to be a fact. But it got me to thinking about how can it be that my ancestors came all the way up that Missouri River, ventured far into Sioux territory, trading fur, when we don't have a damn tree on our place. maybe we have messed up that ecosystem that bad. And it got me to thinking about what we could do differently to create some different outcomes. So another of my mentors or colleagues, or really dear friends, if you want to call them that too, Nicole Masters, talks about the mindset shift that is needed to get into a regenerative soil health frame of mind. So I want to try to pull all this together today with you all and talk about why this isn't happening on a broader scale. You listen to Dallas and Ms. Macnab talk about this. Those are great outcomes. Why wouldn't every rancher on the planet want to do that? My good friend Irvin's here to talk about tribal indigenous-led efforts. He does bison restoration. We're now in a place where regenerative agriculture isn't just a catchphrase. There are people that are out there doing it and making a better living, creating soil health environments, broadening ecosystems. So why the hell isn't it happening? I think it was Ms. Macnab had up there the stresses. Well, one of the stresses that our producers all across the countryside feel was very well articulated by Dallas, and he said he's been in a nonprofit business and not jeopardized its status for 50 years. That's the paradigm that our producers find themselves in. You can't have a long-term vision when you need to be thinking about next year's profit in order to keep that farm or ranch or lease in your control. So fundamental in all of this is reimagining the entire system of agriculture. And as your FSA administrator for 91 days and 1 hour yet, at least, I've been trying to do that at the agency level with the support of Secretary Vilsack, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and we have been given significant latitude in trying to change the way we do things to help facilitate the outcomes that we all can see so clearly with the imagery that we've seen here. A lot of you are seeing it firsthand in the ecosystems you have the good fortune to work in. We have been working towards fundamentally changing that system, more local food production, more conservation efforts, a broader conversation about working lands and conservation. Our grassland CRP program has grown sixfold since we started with that program in 2021, since we made some enhancements to make it more appealing to producers, to give them an opportunity. Because every cattleman out there, every horse person out there, everyone that's got a chunk of land and is doing something with regard to agriculture on it today, is trying to figure out how they're going to pay the bills at the end of the year so that they can go and convince somebody to loan them the money to do it again next year. That's a system that's going to continue to perpetuate this type of activity being in a fringe or on the edges. So we have to fundamentally reimagine the way we invest in agriculture. If we're going to continue a 3 and 5 and 7 year borrowing and lending paradigm for our producers, we better get comfortable with climate change and figure out a way to do it and survive it, because we're not going to change it with a production cycle mentality. We've got to think about transforming this through long-term investments. If we want to have a generational impact, we might need to think about generational investment in agriculture producers themselves. Some of the work that we've done to really pioneer that at the Farm Service Agency is in a farm loan rule that we used to change the mindset of our staff and to give them the latitude they need to really help producers see themselves in opportunity. I visited with countless ranchers across the country in the last 3.5 years that I've had a chance to do this job, and none of them would be able to envision themselves in the opportunity that Mr. May has created to help prevent floods downstream, be part of a flood control system, because they know that they've got a 3-year note on those cows. And they just happened to take that loan out last year when we're at record high cattle prices. And as the cattle cycle turns, which all of these commodity cycles do turn, they're going to be sitting there with debt against cows that are worth half the value that they were when they started. And the lender is going to say, you know, I just don't think we're going to be able to give you as much operating capital this year. And the farmer, rancher, producer is going to have to tighten their belt, probably going to have to take a job in town if they don't already have one, just to be able to maintain. So what we're doing at FSA with our new farm loan rule and our new approach to this is thinking about that commodity cycle and stretching the terms of our finance beyond it. If we've got a 7-year cattle cycle, we need a 10-year note. Our farm loan program has been relegated to the fringe of ag finance for way too long. We serve what has been the lowest viable option in finance. Our portfolio is made of producers who literally can't get credit elsewhere. And it still performs very well when we put the right terms in front of them. So the value proposition that I advance to you all here is, if we change the way we finance agriculture, producers are going to be able to see themselves in opportunity. You can sell a pound of ground bison meat for $20 a pound, easily. Ground beef in the store is selling for $5, $6, $7. What producer in their right mind wouldn't want to do that? Why wouldn't they all just run to that and do it? Go to your bank and try to borrow money to establish a buffalo herd. First, they'll chuckle at you like you all did, and then they'll tell you why there's so much risk in that. And what they will do to mitigate the risk to them is pile all the damn risk on you. And then they're going to say, hey, FSA, we've got this deal we'd really love to do. Why don't you guarantee it so we don't lose anything? It's a fundamentally flawed system. It's going to continue to generate exactly what it's designed to generate. We got to broaden the time horizon that we're considering these things. Take one of those stressors off the mind of that cattleman, that livestock grower, so that he can see himself in his opportunity. In the United States Department of Agriculture, our sister agency has been doing some beaver dam analog work since 2012 as part of the Sage Grouse Initiative. At the Farm Service Agency, we have been doing CRP for 45, 50 years, I think now, and it wasn't until 2021 when a hard-headed cattleman got the job as your administrator and started telling folks, we need to think about beaver reintroduction, because the book was fresh on my mind. And for a year and a half, they literally thought I was joking. So finally, we were on a meeting with the Conservation Division, and I said, thank you. I said, what's going on here? I thought we talked about this 6 months ago. And they said, oh, you were serious? I said, you're damn right I'm serious. So every year, as part of our suite of CRP work, Conservation Reserve Program work, we have what's known as a monitoring, assessment, and evaluation grant solicitation. Last year, we put up $20 million open to the world to come forward with solutions to help us understand what could be done better or different in our Conservation Reserve Program. Because of the influence I've been able to have in helping our staff think about a different mindset to this work, part of that MAE solicitation included keystone species analysis. Ironically, the only entity that put in for a keystone species portfolio was Pheasants Forever. I always tease my friends in South Dakota, it's our state bird. It's an invasive species. It's the Chinese ringneck pheasant, just to rile them up a little further. But they received a cooperative agreement or a grant, or however you want to talk about it, federal funding to analyze some things. So we're looking for a partner in that agreement to come forward and help us really take a deeper look at what actual beaver reintroduction would look like? And can it be part of a grassland CRP plan? Can we enhance the work that we've done with beaver analogs so that it happens on a broader level? My God, I talked to people in Oklahoma in the agency, and folks in eastern South Dakota in the agency, and when I talk about beavers, they would say, God, you can come here and get all you want. So I asked the lady from Oklahoma, I said, you know, how deep do you have to go to get water where you're at, where you got those beavers? Oh, sometimes we got to go 40 feet. I said, up here on our ranch, where the beaver have been eliminated since the 1800s, or the 18th century, we go 2,300 feet to get water. I said, bring all of those damn beavers up here. We'll take them. And I was really glad to see them using cattails, because I can make a cattail patch. So we're going to talk some more about that. But I just want you all to think about what can we do to help enlist more folks in this cause. And we might have to think on a systemic level and think about the pieces we need to put into place. In the 1930s, when the dust cloud got to Washington, D.C., we made some systemic changes to the way we're doing agriculture and conservation work. Maybe it's time to do that again now and really think about what a significant federal investment would look like in this space, because society depends on it. And the private sector sure in the hell ain't gonna do it. So to my friend, my hopefully new friend, Ms. Macnab's point, there's an election coming up. They're all important. Participate, share your voice. When you get done going to the ballot box, call whoever the hell got elected and give them a piece of your mind about how important this work is and how important the federal government having a role in dealing with these societal existential crises is. For another 91 days, I get to be your FSA administrator. It's been the great honor of my life so far. My phone number and email are on the website. I hope you take advantage of them. And if you come forward to us with a challenge and a solution, I guarantee you, we will get it in front of our conservation team. And I will tell you this, they've all read Eager as part of their conservation book club. So they will, thank you. But use the opportunity to have leadership that's available, understands that we might not know every damn thing, and is willing to listen to solutions offered from the folks that are out there really doing it on the ground. With that, I'm going to cut myself off because I got just seconds left. Thank you all for your time, attention. Thanks again to the Beaver Institute for having me here, and I hope to continue to learn more.
Thank you so much, Zach. And yes, if all of the presenters could please join me on stage. We're going to have a bit of a Q&A. And we're going to do a little bit of adaptive management with this Q&A. So I've been monitoring those of you who have submitted questions. Thank you very much. We're going to go through them. But we're also going to have two of our lovely Beaver Institute folks running around the audience. If you are unable to access the app or if something comes up as our lovely presenters are having an enticing conversation, raise your hand and someone will try to get to you with a microphone. I'm going to pull this off. All right. Thank you all so much for those really insightful presentations. I'm sure it was fascinating in the audience here. So the first question that kind of came up multiple times and comes up in my work when I'm interacting face-to-face with ranchers and producers is, you know, how do you get a rancher or producer who's been on the landscape generationally, who's been removing beaver generationally, to potentially change their mind or see a different way to manage the landscape. And so I'd be curious to hear either a success story you've had in conversing with a producer, or as a producer yourself, what made you have a little bit of a mind shift, and yeah, how that's gone forward.
Bueno, sí. I'll go very quick. 6-7 years ago, when we started working with ranchers in these tributaries of the San Pedro, the rancher asked me, because I don't live in the watershed of the San Pedro, I'm not a rancher, I grew up in the city, all those things. So this rancher, a young rancher, he asked me, "The hell are you doing here? You're not a rancher. You don't know anything about cows. You blah, 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 blah," all those things that we hear often. And my response was, "Wow, that's a fantastic question. Well, I'll take a risk," I told him, and explained why I'm here. You know, I'm here because I like the happiness of rivers. And then this rancher looked at me and just, "Happiness of rivers?" Yeah, when a river flows, it's kind of happy. I mean, we come from the desert. Rivers don't flow that often. But when they flow, they're very happy or aggressive, and there they go. There is the water flowing. And it's kind of happy sound. So these ranchers go, "Wow, I want a happy river too. All right, how do we work towards that?" So that was a great conversation after that. Those are the risks I talk when I talk. And just to talk about happiness of rivers, what the hell is that?
I guess I'll go. It's very difficult. Zach mentioned some of the problems, and it's economics. It's really easy to have a mindset and a philosophy of conservation. Ours is conservation, but it's also working lands. So our lands have to sustain us, have to pay for us to be there. In turn, we have to pay for the privilege of having them. As Zach said, we have a yearly mortgage payment. We did not inherit what we have. We have huge obligations. So in order to get many other people to do that, it's economics. For us, we do many collaborations with different groups. We have a carbon credit offset program that we started many years ago on the ranch. The first carbon credit offset program in North America that was privately funded. So we, with Ducks Unlimited, created a protocol to be able to get that done. That's one way we're able to get a little more incentive into it. It's just continual. We also are Audubon Conservation Ranching certified. We try to raise our beef in the most humane way, most bird-friendly way. Birds are keystone species. If we're raising our cattle in a way that benefits bird habitat, we're benefiting soil health, invertebrates, everything we're doing. So it's very difficult. It's economics. It's great to say you're doing it. I fight it every day, but there is a way to do it. And I was really glad to have the FSA administrator here to tell us that those cycles are tough to break. It's extremely difficult for young people to get into this. It can be done. The Beginning Farmer program through FSA has gotten all 3 of my kids and their families started. But it's difficult. The mindset to be able to have a conservation mindset and want those beaver to be out there rather than a maximum extraction of resources off the land, because they're not mutual. They work against each other. If you're going to extract all of the resources off of your land, that's not sustainable. You'll go for a few years and it's done. And somebody else will come in and try to repair the damage that you've done. But to try to have a holistic experience to where whatever you're doing is sustainable. If I'm doing this year and I continue to do that this year, will it still be available to me 20 years from now? Will it be available to the next generation 20 years from now? And if we're forced to constantly take maximum extraction of resources, the answer to that is a flat no. So it's a difficult conversation, but that's the bottom line.
Thank you. And I was interested to hear what Dallas May had to say about this because for those of you that don't know, he is the ranchers representative on the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission and very, very well respected across the state.
But I'm not today. Today I'm just a rancher.
Oh, okay. But this is a really good question, and it's one that I think about, not just how can we get more ranchers and landowners to implement methods that will attract and sustain beavers, but how do we get more ranchers and farmers to use regenerative methods that are improving the soil, retaining water, and creating it's remarkable when you use regenerative methods how it attracts wildlife and creates a haven for them to be healthy and survive. So that is a key question. I'm not sure I have the answer for it, but I do think economics is pivotal. The state of Colorado and the federal government is offering ranchers financial incentives to utilize these techniques. But this is a group of people who change very slowly. And I personally think it's a combination of the economics and, really important, people like Dallas May who are well respected in their community and are doing it and are able to show that this is not just good for the ecosystem, it's good for the rancher's pocketbook, because this is a group of people under extreme financial stress. So that is very important, but they need to hear from their local role models who they trust.
Thank you. And I'll just add a little bit to that to talk about the mindset shift and how you can come at that in a way that's respectful. So the first tenet of the way we do horsemanship on our place is awareness. We've got an idea of what we want to have happen with that horse, so we got to be aware of that horse's reality. That horse was perfectly fine before we ever showed up, so far as they knew. And then we have to have empathy. We got to understand that that horse wants to eat, he wants to be comfortable. And then it's up to us to adjust our presentation to try to get to that shared goal. So you might have to come at this 7 different ways, like we saw with the waterways that we're building in beaver dams, to get that to work. The first time they did that, it probably didn't work out. So they said, let's put this corrugated pipe. Let's make it further. We've got to take that same approach as we're going to try to enlist our farmers and ranchers into this, because farmers too. I mean, on the Red River Basin in North Dakota, they put pipe in the ground to drain the water faster into the river. Think about that. Think about the economic pressures that are on people that force them to drain the most essential thing to grow a crop away faster. So the cattlemen that you're dealing with, they're being told, get this calf as big as you can, as fast as you can, and make it fat. That animal goes into the commodity beef system, the fat's trimmed off and mixed with Brazilian beef. They're shooting themselves in the foot. But it's because they're in this confined space where they've got to generate as much profit as they can in as short a window as possible, because the financial tools don't support that longer term vision. So awareness, empathy, presentation, and adjust to fit whatever their reality is.
Great, thank you. And I'm not going to veer too far away from that question. This is kind of in the same vein. So if now we've kind of talked about general ranching, conversations you've had, taking that perspective of the rancher, the landowner. Now, I want to drill in specifically to hay and crop producers. Now, when we're talking cattle, a lot of times we're talking how the cattle utilize the waterway and the effect it has on the land as a whole. And a lot of times if I'm speaking to a crop producer or a hay producer, there can be a tension on losing a few feet of, hayable pasture, or, having some trees get flooded out. How would you communicate the benefit of beaver? And we can take it to a larger scale of just some regenerative practices as a whole to a producer like that.
I'll start and just talk a little bit about our conservation program. So in our CRP suite of programs, we've got what's called continuous CRP, and that's where producers can come in and take the most vulnerable land out of production altogether in exchange for a rental payment and deploying conservation measures. So there, to Deirdre's point, there is actually some incentive payments provided by the federal government to help in that regard, to replace that income and then to build that conservation benefit, get the filter strip going so that you're causing that sediment to slow down. We've got a grassland CRP program. When we came in 2021, the minimum rental payment that we would offer a producer to commit to a 10 or 15 year contract was about $2 an acre. They can't see themselves in opportunity with that. So we raised it to $15 an acre, and we've got record enrollment. We've got around 8 million acres in the grassland CRP program. That is the epitome of a working lands conservation program. So we look forward to trying to continue to leverage those opportunities so that we can help producers see themselves in these conservation measures and in this beaver reintroduction effort.
So I'll just respond on that one. To me, the big opportunity with the ranchers is in the dry country. At our ranch, we have to truck water many times in order to attract cattle to where the feed is really good, but there's no water up in that dry country. And what many people are finding across certainly the West is that the springs and creeks and ponds with which they have depended upon in past years have either disappeared or are disappearing. So the beaver offers an opportunity, along with managed grazing, to be able to rejuvenate and revitalize these critical water sources. And not having to truck water is a major savings of expense, and it opens up vast areas of land where there is feed but no water. So I think, in tandem with the federal program and incentives, that is something that is kind of the low-hanging fruit in this case with beavers.
Well, I will speak as a crop farmer. We, besides our cattle ranch, we raise alfalfa, corn, wheat, many alternative crops. But our system is broken. Our system is broken in a way that 100 years ago, when beaver were removed from the landscape, it created more flows of water temporarily. Because those beaver were removed, we all of a sudden came into a system of flashes, peaks and valleys. Water was available in a massive amount for a short time, and then it wasn't available at all. So what happened with that, there were a lot of junior water rights were filed on, and those junior water rights were given. So now that if the level of the water raises to a high enough level, those junior water rights come into priority. They can draw water. But if the water never goes above that level, which it does in a healthy stream system, the beaver keep it maintained coming out slow rather than peaks and valleys. While in a healthy functioning stream system, that water stays more stable and level, and those junior water rights never come into priority. So what's happened is, because of that, there's much land that has taken the water away from that system, whereas if the beaver were put in place, the hay farmers, the corn farm, everybody that's doing would be more stable. But I'll give you an example. And we are our own worst enemies. That happened 100 years ago with the removal of beaver out of the stream systems. But what's happened recently, and we have it in the lower Arkansas Valley, we have a compact with the state of Kansas that Colorado has to deliver a certain amount of water to the state line to meet the compact. And they consider things that have happened in Colorado over the last 60 years as taking water away from that. So some of that is pumping water out of stream systems. And so in order to rectify that, we had to put water back into the river, augment the water that you pumped out. What happened with us now, everybody's trying to get more efficient. Irrigation sprinklers rather than flood irrigation, drip systems, to try to get more efficient, which has done one thing. It's increased the production of crops with less water, but it has destroyed our ecosystem. There is no longer groundwater. There's no longer flowing streams, because That type of irrigation has taken the water and kept it in the top few inches of the soil, which is always dry, and it has stopped the streams and creeks from flowing to the river, ruined a lot of native habitat. One example I have, we have a junior water right. It was decreed in 1910, which that doesn't sound very junior, but it actually is. So decreed in 1910, we are allowed to take 11 CFS out of a stream that works its way through other properties before it gets to us. That was always a great water right. We always got a lot of water when everybody was flood irrigating. As soon as the efficiencies came in and sprinkler systems started going up, that water right has not flowed water in 9 years, and it probably never will again because the groundwater has dried up. Since the groundwater's dried up, there's no more ecosystem, there's no more wetlands, there are no more invertebrates, there's no healthy system up above. And we have created that in the system of efficiency that we push for today, which to me is a big problem.
Fantastic. It's interesting to think about productivity of water. And this morning we hear, and they let us know that whenever we talk about water, it's interesting that we immediately go to the humans and the needs of humans. But not all the water should be for humans. Water is also for nature. And we humans been for 500 years extracting and extracting and extracting and continue extracting. Well, what are we giving back to that nature to it can continue producing? So understanding what is our role in the built environment or the used or productive environment and the water cycle, what are we doing to the water cycle? Again, beavers and no beavers. What happened in the desert systems where I come from, San Pedro and Santa Cruz? The beavers that we see, the rivers that we see today, they didn't look like that 500 years ago. We used to have beavers and no cows, but bison, but instead we have a series of cienagas. We didn't have a San Pedro River. We have a bunch of cienagas that were connected through the beaver system. So that was fantastic. All those beavers were introduced in maintaining the aquifers, maintaining the productivity of the surface, and then, okay, we hunt all the beavers and we have hats and all that stuff. And then cow comes, and then we have denuded soils and da. So that's why the rivers that we see today, they look that way. So it's understanding our behavior and the implications of that to the water system. And then we can create all kinds of regulations and things like that. But just understanding that connection, that beavers and our agricultural system sector, if we work together, we can balance that. But we don't have that balance right now. Beavers, they used to help us a great deal in maintaining the productivity of that landscape and maintaining levels of aquifers. But now we don't have the beaver, and we have a river flowing, so that's where the flushes happen. But water that used to be maybe a month, 2 months in the surface, or 3 months, or the whole season, it used to be there. But now it rains in the San Pedro and the Santa Cruz watersheds. Yes, the river flow, but it's just 2-3 days, as opposed to the whole year. That's why we need the beavers back.
Thank you. It seems that all of you agree that there actually needs to be a really high-level philosophical shift that trickles down into an administrative shift that trickles down into, an application shift. So quite a few things need to happen concurrently to be successful here. And we have a question in the audience. We do only have 3 minutes left, so we're just going to go real quick here.
Hello, thank you. Question for Zach. I may not look like it, but I'm a rancher of sorts in Texas. I've been working on a beaver project, and basically we have a perennial creek with a 2-acre pond. I want to introduce beaver. They're beaver about 15 miles from this space, but not federal, but Texas Parks and Wildlife says you cannot move a fur-bearing animal. And then also, I think to the family, I think it'll be fine, but I would love to have some expertise to, a consultant come look at which trees to wrap, how to do that. There's a house nearby, I don't want to flood. So it's very experimental space. We might have the capital to do it personally, but currently it's illegal. I'll also say you were asking about other things to get more partnership. We're doing managed intensive grazing, and thank you so much for the FSA money for, NRCS cost share for pipeline. One small issue is, if we have a pasture that has a 5-gallon-a-minute windmill, and we want to build a 50-gallon-a-minute pipeline extension, the NRCS sees that as basically the same. They say that pasture is watered, and it's not the same, because we can run a mob of 800 cows in this pasture, and we could maybe put out 100 head with the other water system. So I think that's I have some other comments about the farming, but yeah, anyways, if you can just speak to some of that, I'd love to hear it.
So the conservation plan that you're going to get designed by the NRCS may not have this open mindset yet, but I can speak very comfortably that Chief Cosby does. He runs the whole NRCS. He is willing to help his staff understand that they're supported in exercising that flexibility to help that producer bring their plan to bear. We're a ways from beaver introduction. The painful truth is Chief Cosby and myself and other federal employees have an appropriation that takes us to the week before Christmas, and then the money runs out to do our job. And we're operating without an actual farm bill right now. So it's really important that, to Ms. Macnab's point again, you vote and you let your congressional delegations know that we cannot have generational transformation, or even within this generation, if we've got 3 weeks or half a year at a time to do it. We've got to do a better job as a society in demanding more of our elected representatives and having a little more vision for the future, and maybe putting some of the partisanship aside and getting along. We don't have a farm bill. We can't enroll in CRP right now. December 20th, my staff gets furloughed if we don't get a budget, the week before Christmas. That's the reality that we've got. Get in touch with me. I'll have Chief Cosby reach out to you, and we can work to get there.
Great, thank you all. That's unfortunately all the time we have for on-stage Q&A, but I am sure all of our presenters are happy to chat with anyone who has further questions in the other amazing spaces provided by BeaverCon for those types of interactions. So let's give it up for these presenters.
All right, well, that was really a great panel. Thank you, everyone. We are going to move to break here very shortly, but before that, I have the pleasure of introducing Tammy McLennan, who is an artist from Ontario, Canada, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what we're going to be watching during the break, if you're in here. And then after Tammy's done, and before you go to break, Adam's going to come up with just a few announcements. And then you'll get a nice afternoon break. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and it's mouse that I do? Yes, ma'am. Perfect, thank you so much.
Okay, I'll hold tight.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the Beaver Institute for having me here and artists in general. It's really exciting to share my work with all of you. I'm from Ontario, Canada, and for the past few years I've been photographing beaver habitats around southern and central Ontario by foot, paddleboard, and canoe. So taking lots of photographs and experiencing all the other creatures that are in the beaver ponds. And these two videos were created from my photo research highlighting the benefits of beavers. And the main beaver character who is present in both videos was photographed in Algonquin Provincial Park. And thanks for watching.
Really quickly before we play, since we are going to be going to break, I just want to let folks know that our artists in residence, Camille Leonard and Lisa Nevada, who did the opening ceremony this morning, they're going to be activating a series of land dance cycles. There's going to be one today, two tomorrow, and one on Wednesday. The first one is at 4 p.m., so meet out there at break to get out of the conference space and go be with the land. They're going to lead an activation through campus and end in the tree room at the Museum of Natural History, which is just a short walk from here. So without further ado now.
Thank you. All right, thanks for watching, everyone.